Hello, Ruth here from Beltane Gifts. Welcome to the Crafting Shares. We are once more in the garage, and today I thought, seeing as it's a special day, I'm up and I'm dressed and I've brushed my hair, that I would show you how to make something a little bit different. So we're going to be making one of these, which should hopefully be a picture of a house. I haven't made it yet, so fingers crossed it goes well. I thought, seeing as we've been doing a lot of characters and animals and things lately, that I would have a go at showing you how to make something a little bit more structured and geometrical. It's a great way to practice doing your flat sides and your corners, and it's also personalisable. Is that a word? I think that's a word. So you can alter it, you can do as many as you want, make your own little village if you feel like it, or you can just do it as a gift for somebody. They make perfect presents if somebody's moving house. You could even turn it into a key ring for your keys. Anyway, hope you enjoy the video. If you do, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and also if you want to watch more videos, be sure to click on that bell icon and the subscribe button so you don't miss any. I'd also like to make a shout out to all my subscribers. I'm up to 72 at the time of filming. Thank you guys, I really appreciate it. Okay then, to the video. Okay, today we're going to be using our felting pad, which is a cloth bag filled with rice. It just makes a nice solid surface to work on. I've got my finger protectors just because I'm going to be stabbing some detail in later. I've got a selection of felting needles here. These are generic needles, so I've got my red one, which is my large, my yellow one, which is my medium, and my green one, which is the fine. And I'll be using mainly the large needle to bring everything together, reducing shapes down with my medium needle, and then I'll be working probably solely with my fine needle just to get all that detail in. Now I've also got a selection of sewing cottons, so I'm using today, I've got white, black, green and purple, but you can use whatever colours you like. I've got some scissors just for cutting off the sewing cottons, and the fibre we're going to be using today, I've got some grey Jacob top, which is a natural fibre. So all that's happened is it's come off the sheep, it's been it's been washed, cleaned, carded, and then that's it. So you'll find that the natural fibres have got a lot more colour to them, blended. So you'll see this sort of darker fibres, lighter fibres. I find you're going to do something like stonework, it's quite nice because it gives quite a, I don't know, varied tone to things, makes it look a bit more, well, not realistic, but yeah. I've also got some dyed Corriedale carded fibre. I've got some grey and bluey grey for the roof. I've got some green for the door and some black for the windows. I think that's it really. So first step, what we're going to do is we're going to prep the grey Jacob tops. Is it tops? Yes. And to do this is about 10 grams I'm using here. You can use less or more. This is just what I've got to hand. What we're going to do is we're just going to grab in our left hand, and with our right hand we're just going to catch and just tear off the fibres just to get them to their natural length. So you'll see this is, pull both ends, that's the natural length. It's reasonably short fibre. It's great for doing 3D work though, because it's got that bit of crimp to it, you know, the texture. So we're just going to keep pulling until we've split this up completely, and once we've split it up we're just going to mess it up and create like a big wodge of fibre. And we do that by just, once we've got it pulled apart, just keep pulling it and twisting it, and just keep going until you've got a big wodge of fibre. So best Blue Peter tradition, here's one I made earlier. So you end up with just, it's starting to almost felt together at this point, and that's what we want, just a nice big ball of fibre. Time for finger protectors next. They go on, and we'll be using our red needle for this, which is our biggest needle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to squidge everything together so that I can pinch it, and then really carefully, I don't want to stab myself, I'm going to be stabbing in between finger and thumb, you can see those there, just stabbing straight down towards the centre of the wodge of fibre. And once that's starting to catch, and you can kind of feel it catching, you can see there it's starting to indent a bit, I'm just going to rotate it and stab down again. And what I'm doing is, to create a ball, you're always stabbing with the point of your needle aiming towards the centre of the ball shape you want to create. And that way, even if you were stabbing from the side, you're stabbing towards the centre, you're stabbing always towards that centre. And what that'll do is it'll just round everything off. So keep rotating. You want to rotate it in all the different angles. You don't want to just keep going one direction. You want to go in all the different directions. Keep going, and what we're going to do is just stab and stab as we rotate until we start to get that nice ball shape forming. Now I'm doing quite deep stabs. I don't want to stab all the way through the fibre. I don't want to be hitting the cushion underneath. I just want to be stabbing so that the needle is kind of reaching that central point of the wadge of fibre. So keep going, keep stabbing. And because this is quite a thick needle and it's very fluffy fibre, you can see it's starting to pull in quite quickly. And I'm stabbing all over, catching any sort of bits like these that are sticking up more than others. We want to catch those. Remember to keep your fingers out of the way. I just stabbed myself. So yes, don't do that. Keep going. Okay, so you want to have a look at the overall shape. There's going to be bits that are sticking out more than others. Those are the bits that we're going to aim for. And you probably start to find that you're feeling some resistance to your needle. And that's because the fibres are kind of catching on the needle. The needle's quite big like this one. And it makes it harder and harder to get your needle through. If that starts to happen, just keep working over finding areas where your needle will pass through easily. But see this area here, you can see the whole thing moving, and it's almost like pressing it with a finger. That area's felted enough with this needle, and what we're going to do is keep going over finding those loose spots, and then once those are gone we're going to swap down to a smaller needle. And if you did stick with this big needle, what you would find is that you'd end up felting the outside surface, but you wouldn't be felting the inside of it, which means your inside would be all squishy. I did have a go with a Christmas tree one time, and I was using a fibre that was too dense for the needle I was using, and I ended up creating a hollow Christmas tree, which was novel. We don't want to do that. Go. So this is reasonably ball shaped ball. I'm going to swap down to my finer needle, and this should pass through. There we go. It should pass easily through, and what's happening is we're still felting those insides, which is what we want. We want to create a nice firm ball so that once we shape it, it's going to all kind of pull together, and you'll end up with a smoother and more evenly felted house. Be sure to keep rotating as you go. You really want to get this nice and even. You want to have a very smooth ball, so the more you rotate and the more of these lumpy bits that you stab in, the smoother your finished piece will be. And you don't want to over stab any one area because you'll end up with kind of flat sections. We don't want that yet. Okay, I think for what we're going to be using it for, this will do. So if you give it a squish, there's a bit of resistance. See, my fingers can't meet. It's starting to firm up quite a lot, which is brilliant. We want it to still have enough squishiness that when we start shaping it, it's going to hold that shape. It'll hold the shape. So I'm going to swap now to my green needle. I can put the others aside for the time being, and we're going to start doing some shaping. Now, the house that I want to create is going to have a rectangular base, so we're going to start with the base and work our way up. And to do the base, what we're going to do is decide how big we want our rectangle to be. So there, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to outline it, and you want your rectangle to be reasonably smaller than the ball we've got, just because we're going to have to bring all the sides in. So I'm just going to go something like this. And what you'll do is you'll go over this outline a couple of times just so that it really shows up. You want to know exactly where you're going to be stabbing. and I'm using kind of a 45-degree angle and just doing lots of little stabs close together until it's really visible. You see that there? Now once you've got your rectangle, we know how big our base is going to be. What we're going to do is just stab straight down, 90-degree angle, little jabs close together, and we're just going to keep going just within that rectangle. And see, you might need to go over it a few times just to get it flat. Keep track though of where you're stabbing. You don't want it to start getting indented, you just want the surface to become flat. So aim for any areas that look like they're sticking up more than others. You don't need to stab too deeply for this. These are just kind of little jabs over the surface. Okay, so if I turn that on the side, you can see there we've got our flat section. Now this is our base. We can always make this a little bit bigger if we need to, or smaller later on. Yeah, just as you need to change it you can, but this gives us our kind of our basis to work from. So what I'm going to do, normally I'd do the front, but I'm going to do one of the sides. Now the reason I'm doing the sides first is because they're slightly higher than the front, so this is going to give us our idea of how high up we need to go. So I'm going to do a couple of lines, and I'm doing them in line with the base. So the base is here and I'm doing my lines up from these. Now we're going for, is it gabled roof where it's pointed? We're going to go for one of those. So I'm doing 2 lines up and then I'm going to meet them at the top with a triangle. Okay, you can just about see that there. And I'm going to go over these like I did the base, just stabbing straight down. Okay, I'm just going to go over the outline again just because it's kind of gone a bit squishy at the edges there. Now if you wanted to, what you could do beforehand is cut out some paper templates of the sizes of things that you wanted and then just stab around the outside of those. I'm doing this a bit freeform, so it's probably going to change as I go along, but you've definitely got that option, and if you want it to look a bit more precise, I'd definitely recommend it. So we've got our one side there, we're going to try and match that on the other side. This is where a template really would come in handy, but I think mine's going to be more of a old, dilapidated old building, so yeah, I'm going to go about that high, so about there. Okay, so it's not showing up very well in the camera, but we've got kind of a flat section there. Now, to do the front, what we're going to do is meet up where the bottom point of our triangle is, so about there and about there, and we're going to stab between the two in a line. Now it's getting trickier to do this because there's so much fluffiness of the fibre, so we'll just do what we can. So we've got kind of our line there, and we're going to use these lines from the previous ones as our outline for this rectangle. Just stab straight down. Now you will find the more that you stab your shape, the denser it becomes, so the easier it is to shape it. It kind of multiplies exponentially, so the more you stab, the denser it is, so the easier it is to stab, so the quicker it becomes. So once we finish this side, it should actually become quicker to do the whole shape and go over the other areas. Okay, so we've got our back now to do. So same as before, work out where your bottom point of the triangle is and just work across, and then just stab straight down within that rectangular shape. Okay, so that's given us our basic shape. You can see that things have come out in other places. We're really going to need to sort of tighten up these corners, but it's giving us kind of that foundation so we can do our roof now. Now with the roof, you have to work out where the top point of your triangles are, and what we want to do is we need to put this at an angle if you're going to stab straight down. So this is going to be your roof angle here, And what you need to do is hold your house so that this is straight down, if that makes sense. Because what we want to do is stab straight down just within that roof area. And because it's on an angle, we're going to achieve an angle. So can you see that there? It's starting to flatten down. So just hold it at the angle that you want to create so that you can stab straight down. Then we're going to turn it round and do exactly the same on the other side, making sure we've got that angle again. Now I'm not overly stabbing this section because we're going to be doing it bit by bit, just so we can really kind of get the shape we want. Okay, so you can see it's starting to take shape. As you stab on the flat surfaces, you'll find that fibre is getting pushed out at the sides here. So what we'll need to do is just go over everything again, just to tighten up the edges. And what we want to do is stab right to the edge. So I'm just doing the base again here. I'm stabbing right up to the edge and starting to felt that. And the more felted it gets, the more fibre you've got to attach to. So basically the denser it becomes and the quicker it is to get that shape. So I'm stabbing right up to the edge and I'm just flattening it down so that it's flat again on this side. Go, and then I'll do the sides again. And I'm going to keep going round until I get a nice flat pointed finish. And it just means going up to right up to these edges, paying particular attention to those, and just going over any area that seems to be sticking up more than others. This is going to take a little while, so I think I shall do this and can come back once it's done. Okay, so it's starting to come together. You'll notice that the angles are looking a bit sharper. Not perfect yet, and I think it's still very squishy, so I think we could still take it down quite a lot if we wanted to. But I just wanted to take you over how to get a nice clean edge, because that's a really important thing. Now, you can see here that the edges are starting to go off slightly, so this one's a bit of an angle down here. What you can do is between finger and thumb, just squeeze just enough to get everything where you want it. So this is looking a bit straighter between finger and thumb. And once you've got it, really carefully by your finger, just stab straight down and just start knitting those fibres together, felting those. And by squeezing them, you're pushing the fibres closer together and they're holding the shape you want them to have. So whilst they're there, you just stab them and that should help keep them in place. I'm doing a few sort of deep stabs and a few little stabs on the surface too, just to move everything in. Now the shallow stabs that you do, the little stabs, where I'm just using just right the end here, that helps to smooth out your surface. Now the deeper stabs, the ones that go further in, they're catching more fibres, so they're changing the actual shape of what you're making. So for this, if I wanted to make it much smaller and denser, what I would do is I would do some deeper stabs and just bring everything down. You can see, because we did a ball first, the fibres are all connected in different directions. So I'm not sure if you can see, but when I stab, you'll see it pulling in from different directions. Now this is what we want, because we want to get a nice evenly felted house. That's basically everything's kind of interconnected and dense and gives you these nice pointy edges. I'm not sure if you can see that there. Let me see how pointy that's becoming. Now that's easier to do because we did the ball first. If we hadn't done the ball, you find that certain areas would be sort of like valleys, you'd have dips and things. You can still fix it, but it just takes a bit more stabbing. So I prefer doing it this way. If you're going to do it properly, do the ball first and then build up from there. So yeah, I'm going to work my way over the whole thing, just pinching things. So for this part of the roof here, I shall pinch that way so that the fibre's getting pushed where I want it. And I'm going to go over the whole thing again, and I'm going to bring it right in. So I'm going to do a mixture of little stabs just to get it smooth and some really deep stabs and kind of condense it down. I want to reduce it by maybe I want to reduce the size by maybe a quarter. And just end up with a much firmer thing to work on. So I will see you in a few minutes. Okay, so been stabbing for a while, and I think we've got a lot more of a shaped, although it's not quite perfect, house there. You can spend as long as you want on this. Make them smaller if you wanted by keep going over it, but I think for this purpose it will work. Now you could stick with the roof as is, but personally I want to kind of add a different roof. Now you could use patches of colour, so add the fibre straight onto the house, but what I thought might be quite nice would be to make a flat piece of felt and to attach it separately. So I'm going to put the house to the side for a minute. Okay, so I've decided to go and use the bluey grey wool to create the roof for the house, and I'm thinking, because we're going to make a flat piece, I'm going to start off with just as it is here, because the carded fibre, the fibres are going in all different directions anyway, and it's got a lot more bulk. I think we can have a go just as is. We'll see how we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm using my fine needle, and I'm just going to stab over the whole piece of roving. I think the width is about right for us, so we're just going to go over the whole thing. Now if I was using roving instead of this carded fibre, what I would do is I would pull off sections and lay them across each other in kind of a cross-hatched kind of effect, and then stab it together, and that would create that flat felt and it would hold together. I haven't actually tried it before with the carded, so we're going to see how this goes. It's a bit of an experiment. I'm going to peel off now, turn it over and do the same on the other side. Okay, now just check it's still wide enough. We're going to work out how much we need. So I want it slightly longer than the roof, so it's got a little bit of an overhang. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold up some edges. I think about like so, highly precise, and just stab over those folded edges. Now because we haven't got any fibres going across, I think once we peel off you'll find, yep, what we can do is spread it out a bit. I'm going to make it quite wide, so we've still got length there. I want to make it as wide as possible, so put down the needle so that I can fold it in half. Brilliant. Now I'm hoping that because we've got fibres crossing over a little bit now, that should help with the strengthening. I mean, it's only for show, it's not actually going to be holding any structural purpose, so you don't have to worry too much, but I quite like it if it's done just a bit firmer. So the stabs I'm using a little bit of an angle at the moment. So again, about 45-degree angle, just going over lots of little jabs, and I'm stabbing effectively the fibre into the cushion just because it's so thin. We haven't got much choice, so remember to peel it off regularly. We don't want it to get too stuck to the cushion. Turn it over and then do the other side. And I have been doing my stabs quite far apart up until now. That's just to kind of, it's almost like if you were sewing you'd be tacking it together, and to finish it off we need the stabs to be a lot closer together so that we really sort of cement that felting process. So I'm doing lots of little jabs, a bit of an angle on the needle, and stabbing just far enough to go into the cushion. You don't need to go any further than that. Once it hits the cushion and you start hitting rice, you're not really felting the fibre anymore, you're just kind of attaching it to the cushion. So go right up to your edges, lots of little jabs very close together, and keep going until the whole thing looks flat. Then turn it over and do it again. You don't have to watch that, so I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, that's gone quite well. I'm going to just go over the top with my thumb and just give it a bit of a rub. I'm just doing this because you can see all these holes. I don't want those to be quite as visible, so I'm just kind of rubbing the fibre together just to fluff it out a bit and just to get rid of those marks. Now I'm going to hold it up to my house and find the roof is grown quite a bit. Now if you want it to overhang that much you can. that can work. If you wanted to bring your edges in a little bit or just smarten them up, which I think I will, what you can do is just pinch between finger and thumb. Definitely wear your finger protectors for this bit, and with your fine needle make sure you've got quite a lot of pressure between finger and thumb. You want to be able to get your needle through, but you want it to be a bit of tension against it. And take it really slow, using a bit of an angle here with my needle. There we go, like that. And what I'm doing is I'm just catching the fibre between the needle and the finger protectors, and I'm just pushing it down. I'm just working on one side, so I'm working on this side, just catching that fibre and tucking it down. And what this does, it just catches those loose fibres, rolls them and tucks them in, and it just smooths out that edge and just thickens it slightly, so you don't end up with these wispy bits. And I'm going to work my way around the whole outside, just doing this just to thicken up that edge. And if you want to, you can work on areas that stick out more and make it a lot more sharp or straight, this edge. For me, I'm just getting rid of some of this thin section. Okay, there we go. Now if you did find that yours has got sticky out bits like this one, I am going to stab that in just a bit. And you can also find that it's still stretchy in places, so you can ease it really carefully. Don't do it too strongly. You can just kind of ease it out so it's a bit more rectangular. Now, sorry, fluff everywhere. Okay, what we're going to do is get our house, and I'm going to lay this on so that it's about even. Please excuse the grumbling in my stomach, I haven't had breakfast yet. Okay, so pop your roof on, and with our fine needle we're just going to stab along in lines. Now the reason I'm stabbing along in lines is it kind of looks a bit like roof tiles. If you were going to be doing a thatched roof, so you'd done this in maybe a yellow or kind of greeny yellow, light yellow, browny yellow. If you'd done it in sort of a thatched colour, you could do your lines downwards instead. I'm using quite a low angle with the needle, and what I'm doing is catching those fibres and I'm tucking them in. And we can go over these again just to make sure that the lines are really well defined, and just try and get them kind of even. And the other side. Now I'm going to push mine up a little bit because I've stretched it just a tad. I'm going to push that up there and stab in, and that's pushing my excess up to the top where I can actually stab straight down between the two, which just gives us that ridge tile effect. I'm going to work on the other side as well. There we go. Now because we've done the flat felt, it means there's less loose fibres to attach it to the roof, so you might find that you'll need to stab over this a few times just to make sure it's truly secure. Just stick to the same lines, and if you want to, you can do the occasional little down line as well, just to give that impression of tiles. If you didn't want to do tiles, you just wanted a block of colour, then just stab evenly over the whole surface. You don't need to do these lines, but I thought I'd give it a go. It's looking a bit like a bird box, so that's an option too. You could turn it into a little bird house, in which case you don't need to do doors and windows, you just need to do the one round hole. There we go. You can play around with this as much as you like and get it exactly how you want it. This will do for me now, just the basics to show you how it's done. It's not my neatest work. So we're going to be wanting to add windows and doors. So I thought for the door I would do green fibre, have a nice green front door. So I'm going to lay the green fibre, just pulled off a small section, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stab in a couple of points. So I'm going to stab where I'm putting the tops of the doors and the bottom points, because the door is going to be rectangular, so I'm just doing the outside points. You can see the fibres start to get pulled into these points the more you go over them. Just capture any loose bits and stab them in. Once they've started holding in place, what you can do is just work your way down the outside edge. Try and keep it nice and smart, just nice straight line, lots of little jabs close together. You don't need to stab too deeply because we're just attaching, we're not changing the shape. So just little jabs. And then you can stab inside the outline. Now if you wanted to, you could make this front door much smaller, do lots of windows and things. You can do whatever you like. That's the great thing about felting, it's so adaptable. But I'm cold, so I'm going to do this quick. Okay, I'm just going to tuck in the bottom part there. And it's exactly the same idea for the windows. We're just going to add a little section of fibre and stab them into place. I've got some black for this, for the windows. And then we've got our sewing cotton, so we can actually do some details around them after that. So just putting a section off there, just a small bit. I'm going to just roll it into a bit of a ball, because this is a bit smaller and more fiddly. So just roll that together. Decide where we're going to put the window, so just to the side there. Hold it with your thumb and then just stab it just in those top corners to start off with, just to anchor it in place. Then the bottom corners, keep going over those 4 dots and you'll start to see the fibre pulling in. You can just grab more and stab, and then you can just stab along those outside edges and then over the centre, and then repeat for however many windows you want. What you can do, if you're going to do several windows, you want them all the same size. If you pull off sections of fibre first, make sure they're the same size, and that way when you attach them they should be about the same size windows. It's quite handy to do it beforehand, because mine isn't quite the same size, is it? I've used a bit too much fibre for this window, but that's okay. I shall just stab it more. Lovely, so we've got our doors and our windows. It's looking a bit like a face. Now if you wanted to, you can add a chimney as well. So for that I'm going to use the same colour fibre as I used for the main building. I'm going to pull off a section, I'm going to pull it apart. I can use a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to mess it up and I'm going to roll it into a bit of a ball. Start that felting process. And then we're going to pop it where we want it, so I think this side here, and I'm going to do a couple of stabs part way down, so I'm just going to do it around here. Okay, I'm going to do the same on the other side, pulling the fibre over, so the bulk of the fibre is on top here, loose. Then I'm just going to push the fibre back a bit. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of almost forming a ball of fibre on top. I'm just pushing it back so it's in line with these. We want the main bulk of it to be up here, which is where the chimney pot's going to be. We don't want to overstab it at this point because we need to shape it. So just little stabs, don't go too deep. We're just kind of consolidating all that fibre together. And where we've stabbed here, that's our basis, so we're kind of pulling from there. Keep rotating. And what we want to do is, I've got my house on its side, so that when I'm stabbing down, it'll be the same surface as this. It'll be a flat surface going that way. So lots of little stabs, pull that fibre in. And if you find that you haven't got quite enough fibre, don't worry, we can always add some more. This is just to get that basic foundation in place. Go, keep rotating. If you didn't, you'd find that all your fibre would end up felted on one side, and we don't want that, so keep rotating to keep it nice and even. What we can do is go from the side now as well, start stabbing sideways. You can see it's starting to thicken up a bit here. And what I'm doing is I'm stabbing into the fibre itself. I'm not stabbing into this flat piece here when I'm coming from this side. Because if we stab it into this flat piece here, you'd spread out the chimney, and we want it to be kind of square. So I'm just stabbing it into itself at the moment. And same from the other side. Now that it's starting to form into this shape, what you can do, pinch it between finger and thumb. We don't want to over pinch it, we just want to hold it in place, and what this will do is it'll stop the fibres from pushing out sideways as we stab, and it means we can start to firm it up and get that square shape we want. Now you will notice I'm not stabbing the top yet. That's because I want to get that square shape before I start flattening it down. Okay, so I think it's time to start flattening from above. It's a rather strange chimney, it's very high. So we're just going to start stabbing down just in a square, and again it helps if you just use your finger and thumb just to pinch and stop those fibres from moving outwards. And we'll do that again from the other side. And what this is doing is it's bringing down the chimney gradually whilst keeping that square shape, which is what we want. Or if you wanted a round chimney, then you would just keep stabbing round in a circle instead of a square. And instead of giving your straight points here, you would just stab round, always aiming towards the central point, central line. But I quite like the square chimneys, so doing it square. Okay. There we go, there's our chimney. Now, what we can do now is with our sewing cottons, we can add a bit of detail. Now, if you wanted to add like an upstairs window with its own roof and things, you can add it in exactly the same way you've added the chimney there. Just build it up gradually. Stab in your outline first and then just work round and round until you get that shape, using the same technique as you did to get the corners here. You can basically create any shape you want now using that technique, as long as it's square and building like. Anyway, I can take my finger protectors off at last and choose some thread. Now I want to outline my windows using white thread. I might even do it around the door as well. So I've got my sewing cotton already on here. This is like embroidery thread, so it's quite thick. It's thicker than normal cotton would be. You can see there's 6 strands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in from the back and sew through my building. And I don't like to put knots in my thread, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide the tail inside and come out just at the bottom of the door like so, pull it through, and I'm going to pull the thread so just enough that the end is hidden inside. There we go. Now as long as we don't put any tension on the thread, it should stay hidden, which is great. What I'm going to do is just going to do a couple of lines of stitches just to outline the door, and then I'm going to move on to the windows. Now I definitely recommend you spend more time on this than I am. This is looking quite messy but hey. Yes, I think instead of messy, I'm just going to say folksy. It's looking folksy. As though a small child has created it. So, yeah. Okay, so once we've finished with the thread, I'm just going to sew back through again. Come out the back. With my scissors, I'm just going to pull tight on this and push against the house with the scissors and just give it a little snip, and there we go, the ends are hidden inside. Now what we can do is just with fingers and the felt needle just catch some of these and just smarten it up a little bit. So any bits of fibre from the windows that are sticking out more than they should, I'm just going to stab those into place at the corners. There we go. That's not too bad. Now what I thought might be nice as well is I've got some black thread. I thought I could add a doorknob. Why not? So exactly the same technique. I'm going to come through. I'm having my doorknob on the right, I think. So I'm literally going to come through to where I want the doorknob to be. Pull through my thread till it's, there we go. I'm going to do a little knot in the thread, being careful not to pull the end through. Go. And I think I might do a letterbox too, so I'm just going to come back through exactly the same spot where the knot was. I'm going to come through that hole again, the knot should hold it in place. I'm going to come down a bit lower. Here we go. It will go through, it will. There we go. Go, so we've got our little doorknob there, and I think just a little line for a letterbox, and then back through. If you wanted to add a door knocker you could do. I'm just wiggling my needle just to make that a little bit bigger. Okay, again, little stitch at the back, cut at the back to get rid of the thread. See, that's showing a little bit, so what I can do with my needle is just felt that through and pull the fibre over the top, just to hide that. There we go. He looks quite happy. What I've also got is some green and purple. I thought it might be a nice idea to do some plants going around the door. So same as before, needle through, come in at the bottom, pull the thread through. Now for this I thought I'd do just some little stitches, as I say, very folksy. Through. And finally my purple ones. And for this I'm just going to do knots, so just do a little knot. I find holding the thread that's come through from the back helps, and then just pull the end that's attached to the needle. Okay, just put your thumbnail over the top of the knot and just gently pull, and that just keeps your knot quite close. Just with these needles and things. And then we just sew back through where the knot came through. Okay, and I'm just going to do lots of these little knots and just add them all over the green, just so it looks a bit like flowers growing. Now instead of doing these as little knots, you could also use beads if you wanted to, make it a bit more 3D. Anything sparkly I think would be quite nice. Okay, so just take a minute just with a needle or two just to catch anything that I've caught there. Oops. Okay, I'm going to use my felt needle just to tighten that up again. There we go. There's our finished house. It's turned out better than I expected. I think he's quite cute actually. You can adapt it however you want as well, so imagine a whole village of them in all different colours, which I think would be lovely. They'd also make great gifts for friends and family, especially if they're moving home, and you can always attach a keyring to it as well. So imagine a smaller one with a keyring attached just to the top. I think that would be lovely for someone as a gift. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed the video. Definitely give it a go if you want. No pressure. If you do give it a go, please let me know in the comments how it went. I'd love to hear about it. Okay, I shall see you next week for another felting video. Bye!